The cowboy gave her one choice: sleep on the porch or share his bed, and everything changed forever. The sun was already sinking when she reached the ranch, turning the sky the color of old blood and fire. Wind swept across the open land, cold and sharp, carrying dust that stung the eyes. Nights in the Wild West were not kind to anyone, especially to those who had nowhere to go. Jonah Cole was fastening the barn door when he noticed her. At first he thought she was a trick of the light. A shadow stretched too long near the fence, but then the shadow moved and he froze. A woman stood there, thin and still, holding her shawl tightly around her shoulders as if it were the only thing keeping her together. Her dress was worn, torn at the hem. Her boots looked ready to fall apart. Her hair hung loose, tangled and dusty, framing a face that had seen too much fear. Jonah straightened slowly. His hand hovered near his belt, not on his gun, but close enough. "This is private land," he called out. "You shouldn't be here." She didn't run. She didn't cry or beg. She only lifted her head and looked at him with tired eyes. "I won't steal," she said quietly. "I won't cause trouble. I just need a place to rest till morning." Her voice was calm, but it carried a deep exhaustion, the kind that came from long roads and longer nights. Women did not walk alone out here unless something terrible had happened to them. Jonah knew that, and knowing it made his chest tighten in a way he didn't like. "You got family?" he asked. She shook her head. "A husband." Her jaw tightened slightly. "Not anymore." Jonah looked past her toward the open land behind her. Miles of nothing, no lights, no safety, just cold and darkness waiting to swallow her whole. "You can't stay," he said, though his voice lacked its usual hardness. She nodded as if she had expected that answer. She turned to leave, taking a step that was too slow, too weak. Her body swayed, and for a moment Jonah thought she would fall. Without thinking, he moved forward and caught her arm. She stiffened instantly, fear flashing across her face. "I'm fine," she said quickly, pulling away. But she was. Jonah let out a slow breath. The wind grew colder, biting deeper into the night. The sun slipped below the horizon, and darkness rushed in like a living thing. "You won't make it far," he muttered. "I'll try," she replied. That answer angered him more than tears ever could. He turned toward the house, then back at her, fighting something inside himself. He hadn't let anyone into that house since the day he buried his wife under the cottonwood tree behind it. The house had been empty since then, filled with silence and memories that hurt too much to touch. "I don't let strangers sleep inside," he said at last, "but I'm not heartless enough to send you into the cold." She waited, watching him carefully. "There's the porch," he continued. "It's dry, covered, you can sleep there." Her eyes followed his gesture. "Or," he added after a pause, "you can sleep in the bed inside. I'll take the floor by the fire." Her eyes widened in surprise. "That's not a fair choice," she said softly. "Life isn't fair," Jonah replied. "That's all I've got." Silence stretched between them. The wind whispered around the house, carrying the sounds of the open land. Finally she spoke. "I'll sleep on the porch." Jonah frowned. "Why?" "Because I've learned not to accept kindness that comes with risk," she said. Something heavy settled in his chest. He turned away before she could see it. He brought her a blanket and a tin cup of water. She took them with a quiet thank you and sat down on the porch, pulling the blanket tightly around herself. Jonah went inside, closing the door behind him. The fire crackled softly, but it did nothing to warm the tight feeling in his chest. He sat in his chair, staring into the flames, seeing another woman's face there. His wife's gentle smile, her warm hands. She would have invited the stranger inside without hesitation. That thought made his jaw clench. Minutes passed, then more. The wind howled louder, and Jonah imagined her sitting out there, shivering, alone. He imagined waking in the morning to silence that meant something had gone terribly wrong. With a sharp breath, he stood. He opened the door. She looked up at him, startled, her face pale in the moonlight. "This is foolish," he said. "You'll freeze before dawn." "I'll manage," she replied, though her voice trembled. "No, you won't," he said firmly. "Come inside. You can sleep near the bed. I'll stay by the fire. No touching, no trouble." She studied his face for a long moment, searching for danger, for lies. Whatever she saw there must have eased her fear, because slowly she nodded. Inside, the house felt small with another person in it. She sat on the edge of the bed, hands folded tightly in her lap, as if afraid to take up too much space. Jonah lay on the floor near the hearth, staring at the ceiling. Neither of them slept for a long time. "You don't ask many questions," she said quietly. "Questions lead to answers," Jonah replied, "and answers lead to trouble." She almost smiled at that. "My name is Clara," she said after a pause. "Jonah." Silence returned, but it felt different now, less sharp. Morning light eventually crept through the window. Clara was already awake, folding the blanket neatly, as if she wanted to leave no trace of herself behind. "I'll go now," she said softly. Jonah handed her bread and coffee. "Stay," he said, "at least until you're strong enough to travel." She hesitated, then nodded. Days passed. Clara helped around the ranch, never asking for anything, always working quietly. She cooked simple meals, washed clothes, fixed torn fabric with careful hands. She spoke little, but when she did, her words were gentle. Jonah noticed things he hadn't meant to notice. How she flinched at loud noises. How she always chose to sit near the door. How she woke from nightmares, breathing hard, staring into the dark. At night they sat by the fire and talked about small things. The weather, the land, horses, never about the past. Until one night Clara broke. Tears fell silently down her face, and Jonah didn't know what to do. He sat beside her, not touching, just close enough to let her know she wasn't alone. "I ran from a man who thought fear was love," she whispered. "I thought I'd never feel safe again." Jonah swallowed hard. "You're safe here," he said. Weeks later, a rider appeared near the fence. Clara froze. Jonah stepped forward, standing between her and the past she feared. The man took one look at Jonah's eyes and turned away. That night Clara leaned into Jonah's shoulder, trembling. He wrapped his arm around her, slow and careful, as if afraid she might break. "I choose to stay," she said later, her voice steady. Jonah looked at her, really looked at her, and felt something warm take root in his chest. The porch stayed empty after that. But the house was never lonely again.